Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're calling it What's Next? Beyond ATG, Hybris, IBM WebSphere, e-commerce platforms. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. My name's Sarah Falcon. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Object Edge. And we invite you to submit any questions you have for the presenter by typing in your questions. There's a little questions pane in your control panel. And send in questions anytime. I'll be collecting them and we can address them during the Q&A session, which we have time slotted for at the end of this presentation. If you have to drop off for any reason, there'll be a recording available and you'll receive that by email as soon as it's ready. So to introduce our presenter, we have Adam Thibodeau today. He's a seasoned e-commerce expert at Object Edge. He brings his deep digital experience, expertise, and his strategic insights, guidance, and business technology solutions multiply success for each of our customers. He's also unique in having the perspective of sitting at multiple seats at the table. He's run the products, he's represented the products, and he's implemented the products. So he's a great, he's the perfect fit for leading today's conversation. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Adam.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate everybody being here. I'm particularly excited about this topic because when I was at JCPenney 5 to 6 years ago, this is something that we would not have been able to do, and it was certainly something that we wanted to be able to do, which is move to a more modern architecture. We were certainly feeling the pain of the monolithic implementation that we were dealing with day in and day out. And so I'm excited. I want to talk. I love this particular topic. I've done some other talks on this topic before, and I want you and everyone on this call to always feel free to reach out to me and discuss this further. So let me give you some real quick context for who I am or who is Object Edge that is talking about this topic today. What we see ourselves as partners in digital maturity, and what that really means is that we partner with our customers that want to really move the needle when it comes to digital. If you're excited about digital and want to compete, we're really a great partner for you. And what we do, no matter where you're at, whether you're starting out or you're highly mature, we can come in and really help you obtain your objectives. And we do this through doing digital transformations. We have a huge experience team where we do digital experience or digital experience management. We also do, and ultimately we do commerce. And commerce is, when we speak about that, we speak of it as really being channel agnostic. Of course, we focus on e-commerce via websites, but we also work with customers down at the retail level or even at the call center level. As a company, we're about 200 plus employees, and we really have our locations around the globe are really designed to have a best shore engagement. Onshore, obviously here in the U.S., but also nearshore in Brazil, and then in Mumbai, we have our offshore team. Here's just a few examples of customers that we work with. We have a lot more. On the left-hand side, we have quite a few of our legacy platform implementation examples where we have implemented ATG or other large-scale platforms. And then on the right, we also have examples of customers that we have brought to a modern architecture, whether we have moved them from monolithic systems like IBM WebSphere, Hybris, and ATG, or maybe their own in-house implementations of .NET or what have you. We've helped these companies move to a more modern architecture leveraging API-based platforms. And ultimately, you may be asking yourself, why Object Edge? We are just laser focused on customers who want to drive digital. As I said before, we drive digital maturity, and anyone that wants to go out there and compete in in the digital space, they're definitely friends of ours. We pride ourselves in creating strategies and tactics that win. We love to work with you on your objectives and understanding what you're trying to accomplish, and then building digital strategies and business strategies around what it would take to make you successful. And all in all of this, we are consultative. We have a consultative guidance approach. No matter what kind of decisions that you're making, we probably have an experience that we can bring in from working with a past customer, where we can help you move to the next step in your process. We're also a little award-winning, to pat ourselves on the back. We like to compete amongst our own peers, and we've won a few awards, including the 2019 Customer Experience of the Year. We were a finalist. And in 2018, we won B2B Experience of the Year, and then in 2018, we also were a hackathon winner. Just to kind of close this out, if you'd like to reach out, it's really easy to reach me. You can reach me at adam@objectedge.com. I hope to hear from you. All right, so now into the meat and potatoes of this. Why move away from ATG, Hybris, and IBM WebSphere? Well, when you got into this platform, I'm sure that is not what you thought it would be. It may have started out as seeming simple and straightforward as an e-commerce implementation, but once you put some blood, sweat, and tears into it, it actually turned into quite a monster. Then once you started your integrations and finished your implementations, it was definitely a monster that has become unwieldy and hard to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and ultimately much more difficult to get rid of than you thought it would be. So how did this become such a monster? Well, it has to do with the amount of time that you've spent on it and the millions of dollars that you may have put into it, getting the system to where it is today. Integrations with other systems were difficult. You probably had to negotiate all of your integrations with other team members within the enterprise. You spent years justifying improvements and further investment into the platform. You may have used or misused the platform for custom functionality, making upgrades very difficult. You invested in third-party solutions to enhance the capabilities, and then trained a ton of employees. We see a lot of our customers are really adept at running their platform, and when it comes to taking it out, it does take quite a bit to retrain those employees and get the same capabilities from one platform to the other and kind of work exactly the same as they may have been used to working in the past. So what's next? Well, let's talk about the modern architecture. We really see this as the culmination and refinement of enabling digital technologies, and that has now really come to fruition. So you probably recognize a lot of these buzzwords and technology capabilities that have evolved over time. And time is really an important aspect of this. When you think about when these monolithic platforms, IBM WebSphere, Hybris, and ATG were put out, it was at the time when functional systems and integrated systems were really the best that the market could do at the time. These technologies were best in class at the time, but more modern technology concepts they might have been in their infancy but weren't really baked into the platform. In many cases, those platforms have been upgraded to include some of these concepts, but by and large, they were an afterthought. And so what we have ultimately here at the bottom is an API-based services architecture, and that's what really I'm going to be pushing for today. It's getting you to a point where you are using what is often called a decoupled architecture or a headless architecture, where APIs are the mechanism in which you can build an architecture, or the APIs are a mechanism that you can use for services and leveraging services so that the architecture is much more nimble and easy to use. So how do you get there from here? So I always love to throw this eye chart up. So back in the day when ATG was being sold to JCPenney, I saved this architecture off, and this is actually quite funny when you look at it. I think this really capture why the solution is these solutions are monolithic, right? They're really built as a one size fits all, but ultimately what I've seen in the marketplace from customer to customer or within JCPenney or wherever, you really see 30% utilization of the product, because ultimately what is here is you have your core capabilities and you have an integration platform, and those core capabilities are leveraged, and heavily the integration platform was leveraged. But what you'll see here when we look at what other aspects of this architecture is here, you see a lot of features and functional areas that have probably been deprecated by some sort of specialty service. So you're probably using something different for content management or something different now for search. It's not something that originally came out of the box with whatever platform you invested. You're now leveraging something that is a point solution that sits and is now hanging off of your platform and has deprecated that original functionality that was not best in class. So how is a modern architecture different? So let's just talk about it as a stack. So you more than likely have an ERP back office, and we're not talking about changing that today. There's a lot of different things that could be in your back office, and today most of these back office are still on-premise solution, although very quickly companies like yourselves are adopting cloud-based solutions that are much more nimble and have APIs associated with it, that are available in the cloud. Oops. But what we really want to get at is that there is a layer that we want to put on top of this. And this layer is typically sitting on top of some sort of enterprise bus, a middleware, but likely what you have is that you have these different shared services such as commerce as a service, content, product, so forth and so on. Each of these areas, which may have initially been a part of your monolithic platform that may have been leveraged to call on one item or another, has really been broken apart. We're not just talking about decoupling your e-commerce system from the front end. We're talking about decoupling it into components, into services that are best in class. And what this allows you to do is this allows you to decouple from your presentation layer experiences, and allows you a lot of flexibility. And so when we think about this, what this architecture brings you at the end of the day is it gives you these services that are channel agnostic. Allows you to build a POS system, your e-commerce experiences, or even your call center employee experiences any way that you want, whether it is for the US or international, multi-site, single site. It just gives you a ton of flexibility. It allows you to have a best of breed approach within your services. So, and it also allows you to invest your dollars where it matters most. So let's say, for instance, that you are your areas, wherever you are within your industry, it is very competitive and it's price competitive, and you're very promotions oriented. You could focus on the pricing service and have intense, amazing promotion capabilities within your pricing service that could serve any and all of your channels across the board. Or maybe you're content heavy and you need to have you're heavy on the marketing side. Like many of our manufacturer customers are very marketing heavy, but they also need to have the content available not only for marketing purposes, but also for e-commerce purposes, which is a little bit more straightforward. So it depends on your priorities as a company, where you invest in these particular service areas. And again, you can take a best of breed approach and invest dollars where it matters most. The other thing that it gives you is infrastructure flexibility. So we really strongly advocate SaaS-based cloud services. But let's say that you want to host on premise. Many of our customers have invested heavily in infrastructure that they own, and they want to still host some of the capabilities on premise. You can definitely do that as long as it has an API around it. But for new services that you're investing in, we definitely recommend that you're putting it in the cloud or within a SaaS application that allows for real-time performance capabilities. All right. Also on the presentation layer side, and a lot of the reason why this whole approach started and why people talk about it being headless is allowing you to create presentation layer experiences independent from the main application. And it allows you to be faster, cheaper, and smarter about building out presentation layer experiences. This is, again, why many of us wanted to do this in the first place, but as I said before, it's really evolved so that not only are you allowed to have presentation layer experiences, you're also able to have independent services from one another, such that it's all decoupled from one another, so that you can gain a ton of flexibility across the board. So how do you get there? We have 5 steps. I think when we advertised this webinar, we talked about it being 3 steps. So you get a couple of bonus steps. When you get into putting together a presentation and then you're trying to squeeze things into 3 steps, sometimes it doesn't always work. So I'll take some humility on that. So when you're doing this, you want to look at assessing your environment first. You want to design your architecture once you have a good lay of the land. Then you want to select which technologies you want to put into place, and then you want to develop your implementation strategy and then execute your implementation strategy. So in assessing your environment, I put this together in a way that made it look like, this could be what you have today or something similar. Maybe it's completely different, but the idea here is that more than likely you don't have something that is beautiful, right? It's not something that you originally intended, but it's something that has evolved over time. And the reason why I put it, I kind of put this together this way is just to say, hey, you know what? You probably have a unique environment, but it's not unique to you that you have something that is complicated and hard to deal with. It's the nature of the beast. So when you're assessing your environment, one of the key things is that you really want to understand your sites, take an inventory of what they're doing, how they're connected, and what the true architecture is. You'd be really astonished to see how many of our customers don't have an architecture in place and understand how everything fits together. It's typically tribal knowledge of how certain things work. The next key piece is that you want to identify your current services. In many ways, some of our customers are already down this path and have already identified or created certain services that made sense along the way. These are great carve-outs that you want to leave in place if they're functional today, if they have APIs wrapped around them, if you're ready to, you want to continue using them, great. That's you're ahead of the game. The next piece is that you want to identify application areas that are taking on a heavy load, that are typically combining multiple services. We see a lot of things that happen over time where customers have taken things and really put too much on one particular functional area. As an example, we have a customer that was using the call center application within ATG, and they actually converted it to an order management system, and as a result, it's become very difficult to decouple from that. And so what we're doing is we're building around it and still leveraging it today in a hybrid architecture, so that we're sending orders to that order management system, and it's still acting as the call center application. So you really there are some things that you may have put into place that are going to be harder to get rid of than others. So it's really understanding where those main areas are, and putting a strategy around how to deal with them. You're also going to be able to you want to identify applications that are heavily serving the business users. One of the key things that happens is when you're moving from one platform to the other, a lot of the paradigms for merchandising or for updating product information has changed from one to the other, and so it's really there is a training process that you need to go through, a change management process that you're going to have to overcome, that you want to identify in advance and understand that you're going to have to deal with it. And then you're also going to want to identify customizations. So all of these, more than likely, regardless of what platform you're in, you've modified JSPs. Those JSPs can have a number of different customizations in it. One of the things that you can do, there are ways of scripting and understanding where those customizations are. That's one of the things that we often do, and we can automate the assessment part of the process by looking at your platform and identifying areas where there's heavy customizations. Next, let's talk about designing the architecture. You want to design for the end state. Having the end in mind is really important. Then doing a gap analysis and then understanding the roadmap on what it's going to take to get there. So what you also want to identify what services make sense for your company. As I was pointing out earlier, you can invest in the services that make the most sense for you. And so really what you want to do is identify the services that make sense for you, that align to your business objectives, and really focus on those. Obviously, commerce is going to be one. Product may be one. We're seeing more often than not, product and PIMS, and product information management systems, are extremely popular when moving to this new paradigm, because the new commerce platforms don't have that makeshift merchandising and merchant level capabilities that, like, let's say Hybris had, or IBM WebSphere, or even ATG. All three of those platforms had pretty robust merchant and merchandising capabilities that just are not available in the modern architectures. It's something that was left behind, but that's where product information management systems come in. And PIMS are typically much more robust. They will make your business users much more happy, and it does allow for you to decouple from the commerce day to day. So if you're doing major changes on your e-commerce site, or even your admin, and making changes, it doesn't disrupt your business users that are in updating products or updating merchandising information, right? The next thing is where is your business going in the future? Maybe you are going international. maybe you are trying to consolidate international sites with your US-based sites, or maybe you have mergers and acquisitions in line for the future. Whatever these is, you want to make sure that you're considering what you're doing as a business. And then the other piece is, and this gets really looked over very often. Typically, as technologists, we look at these problems as technology problems, and the easy thing to deal with is really architecture and the technologies that need to be in place. And we put together a plan that is really focused towards getting the technology from point A to point B. But what's really left behind typically is the company and the business. And what you want to do is you want to look and see, how can you move your business and your company culture from point A to point B as well, maybe moving them from waterfall methodology to agile methodology. There's a ton of opportunity there that you could use this effort that you're going through to really move to a more agile approach, and combine your business together with technology to be a lot more effective in the marketplace. Hence, if you kind of boil this down, that's what we call digital transformation. So the next piece is selecting your technologies. So when you're selecting your technologies, you definitely want to take you want your services architecture to take on a best of breed approach. And I've mentioned this many times before even in this presentation. It does allow for you to kind of cherry pick where you want to go. We highly recommend cloud-based SaaS solutions that have robust APIs. Some companies have. It's really very important when you are evaluating who you're working with or where you want to go, to evaluate the APIs separate from the demo that you might be looking at yourself. So typically when you see a demo, you see a prepared presentation or a walkthrough of an experience. What's actually really, really important is that you get API documentation, and then you go through it and really evaluate it on the functional level. And Object Edge, we're very familiar with multiple platforms, and we can talk to you about which platforms actually have more robust APIs versus others. And typically I'll just tell you, more often than not, that has to do with when that particular company started offering APIs. And you'll usually see those have more mature platforms, especially the ones that started out as API first. And because ultimately commerce solutions are not one size fit all. And again, please reach out to us if you need help here. We love talking platforms, and we typically can help accelerate this process for you. It's not just a matter of looking at the Gartner quadrant or the Forrester Wave report and saying, yeah, these are viable solutions, let's go with those. There's a lot more to it, as you can imagine. All right, so then developing an implementation strategy. So when I want to point this out, there isn't a one size fit all strategy for doing an implementation. It really has to do with what type of environment that you're in today. And so I'll make two generalizations. The generalization I'm going to make is I'm going to give you a multi-site strategy, and I'm going to give you a single site strategy. The multi-site strategy is, let's say you have a lot of different websites. You might be putting up a new website that is separate from what you've done before, or maybe there's a low revenue, low risk site that you can identify that would be an ideal first implementation. The idea here is taking a vertical approach, a vertical slice, if you will, out of the stack and building your first website. It's kind of what's represented here on the left in the diagram. Taking that vertical slice and saying, okay, end to end from the presentation layer all the way to the back end, we're going to create our first website with this new architecture. The benefit of doing that is that becomes like your pilot site. You learn a lot. You learn what's important, what's not important, what you missed, all of that stuff. It's really a very low risk approach. And then after that, then you start taking further slices out of your architecture, out of your business, typically going from least risky to highest risk application kind of as you go. So that's the approach we're taking with a number of our customers that have multiple sites. It's what really works. It's a nice approach. If you're a single site environment, let's say that you have one business in one site, and it is heavily ingrained in whatever platform it is, Hybris or whatever. What do you do about that? Well, this takes a lot more engineering and architecture and thought, because what you would do is, instead of really moving to, let's say, okay, we're going to re-platform, what you really want to do is carve out services one at a time until you get to the presentation layer. And so the first thing that you might want to do is you might want to introduce that PIM, that product information management system, and carve that out. Or maybe you want to carve out orders or accounts, or eventually you're going to say, okay, well, after we do the PIM, then we're going to do shopping cart and checkout process. We're going to do payment processing. Whatever it is, you basically want to start taking large bite-sized chunks out of your legacy architecture to the point that it's deprecated and eventually it disappears. I have one big one big piece of advice in this area, and we see this happening more often than not. And we've been burned, especially when we were initially replacing these monolithic platforms, is that the expectations of where you're going, it needs to be set very, very tightly. And here's the thing: you're more than likely, if you're on one of these platforms, you've been investing in this platform for 8 to 10 years. It doesn't represent anything that was initially came out of the box with the platform. You've been adding features and functions along the way, and what you have today is something that really suits your business. It's expensive. It's hard to deal with. There's many reasons to replace it, but you have to keep in mind that all of those capabilities that you've been building over time may or may not exist on the platform that you're going to. And in many ways, you shouldn't expect it to be. So you need to set the expectations internally with the business and what have you, that there's going to be some prioritization, so that wherever you go, wherever you're going to, and whatever you produce that first time could be less than what you have today. I know that's like blasphemy and could potentially hurt your revenue, but the reality of it is that you really need to look at what it is that you're going to be producing the first time around, and also prioritize what features and functions make it, because there, as I can probably guess, there are features and functionality on your site that you created for one particular instance or nuance that really isn't making you money, and the ROI isn't there. So those features and functions need to be evaluated, and it is just a reality. And now the benefits for going there are numerous, but the reality of it is that when you put 8 to 10 years of internal development towards a solution, you're going to have to evaluate what goes forward. All right, so finally, let's get to the last one, executing your implementation strategy. And as I said before, I'll say again, you're going to avoid the big bang approach. Slow and steady makes for a lower risk migration. You want to bring your company culture along. And again, so if you're not working agile, now is the time to make a move. So I kind of went into a lot of the execution part on the last slide, but the reality of it is that the planning and actual implementation really does take a lot of care. We do love to help our customers through this, and we can provide services that help you get from point A to point B. But at the end of the day, this is the method and the architecture that we recommend time and again. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. And now I want to open up to you guys to bring up any questions that you might have. So like first off, thank you for being here, and then second, if you have any questions or if you'd like to reach out to me, please reach out to me at adam@objectedge.com. Sarah?
Great, thank you, Adam. There's a lot to take away from this. Seeing that legacy environment with the overlays was really impactful. And I also enjoyed the Little Shop of Horrors throwback for film buffs.
It's my favorite slide. Yeah.
It's great. We did get a couple of questions, and we do have some time if anyone wants to submit questions in the control panel. So the first question is sort of tactical, which is, why would you duplicate your data in your services layer? Why don't you just use your ERP system?
Yeah, okay, so that's a really good question. I'm going to back up and pull up the architecture and speak to it directly. So what happens here is that you're pulling up the data into this services layer, and the point here is that it's all about performance. So, and it's about performance, and then some people have called it beautification or extension or what have you, but you're really adding on to what is available in the ERP system and making it web ready, services ready, performance ready, so that you can serve your presentation layer on an ad hoc basis very, very quickly. If these elements, if like pricing, for instance, you leave in the back office, every time you do a pricing call, you're going to have to wait for your ERP system, for instance, to do a calculation and then provide it to the presentation layer, which would greatly impact the experience. If you have further questions on that, please submit it into the control panel.
Great, thank you. And one more that we got, which is what commerce technology platforms do you recommend?
Oh, well, that's kind of the secret sauce, isn't it? What would we recommend? There's a lot of great platforms out there, and we actually, as I was saying before, you want something that's API first. There's a couple that we really recommend very often, maybe 2 or 3. We really like the Oracle Commerce Cloud platform. It tends to have the most robust set of APIs available, predominantly because they started the development about 6 years ago, before the headless architecture idea was even very popular, before even headless was being circulated. They were working on a headless architecture and then when they put it out in the marketplace, they actually happened to also include a presentation layer with it, with admin capabilities and agent console, all of that stuff. So from the get-go, they designed it API first, and therefore it's very mature. There are other companies out there, Elastic Path has a very mature API set. They're a company that we work with, but they're typically a company that we include because there are requirements to keep things on premise. It's an on-premise solution with a very broad API layer set, and we find that that's a good way to go when you're trying to stay on premise. If you're trying to go microservices, Commerce Tools has a solution, but if you're going to do some advanced things, we're finding that Commerce Tools, even though they have really great kind of core services, they do miss some of the features and functionality around B2B. So if you have B2B needs, Commerce Tools isn't really there yet. But that's kind of how I would start, splitting up the field. We also have experiences with onesies and twosies experiences with others. We would not recommend like a two-tier architecture like Magento or Oro. Those are really not meant for high performance, and although there are thousands of implementations out there, just the two-tier architecture just doesn't lend itself really well to a modern architecture. But anyway, I probably can ramble on about that for some time. Are there any other questions? There were those two.
Yeah, and just one more about APIs specifically, which is how do you manage APIs that have cross dependencies? For example, the orders API and the product need pricing. Should the APIs call each other?
Yeah, so typically what you're going to have is you can have the APIs call each other. You have to keep that in mind when you're putting together your API architecture. But ultimately, what we see is that sometimes you need to provide a certain function. You need to do multiple APIs across different services. So they all have to be available. So like, for instance, if you're putting together a PDP page, you need to be able to put together something that comes from maybe content, from product, and pricing, all within a single page. So all of these systems need to be performant and be able to provide real-time answers to queries, right?
Great. Thank you. Wait, I think we just got one more. Let me just check. No, I think that's it.
Okay, great. Well, again, I really appreciate everybody that attended. I appreciate the questions, and if you guys would like to reach out to me directly, I love talking about this stuff. So please email me at adam@objectedge.com. I'll throw up my the thank you page one more time. And again, we're excited about this. We love working with people like yourselves, and feel free to reach out to me.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye.